Hello friends, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to share this build with you of this very colorful Victorian style home. So this house is actually the second house I'm building for the same spellcaster I made the little fairy cottage for, but I wanted her to live in my forever save in Willow Creek, so the other house didn't really fit in as much as I love that one too. So I built this one in the same neighborhood as the pancakes, so I feel like this house really fits into the world and it's very colorful and a bit eclectic, which I really think suits a spellcaster. The spellcaster's name is Thistle Nightshade, and she has a pet raccoon named Thimble, which I just think is so adorable. And I'm really excited to play around with spellcasters for the first time and also develop a story and background for Thistle, which I haven't done yet, but I think it's going to be something about inheriting this old house and discovering her spellcaster lineage. I also didn't really show the attic of this build at all because I didn't want to make it feel like it's specifically for a spellcaster, but I did put a cauldron in there and made it a bit old and moody and kind of spooky, but you'll be able to see it if I ever record a video with Thistle. I am really happy with the way this house turned out. I really went out of my comfort zone with the plants in the garden and it looks super full and lush. I absolutely love it. The hosta plant from Cats and Dogs has become my new favorite plant. It adds so much texture and contrast to the garden beds, and I think I also love them because hostas are something that I've been planting lots of in my own real life yard, so it's really fun to see them in the game as well. And I think they are such an underutilized plant that I don't really see a lot of other simmers or builders use very often, but they are so beautiful. But before I get too far into describing the house, I just want to say how much fun it was to build this house, specifically a Victorian style home. I used a reference off Google for the shape, and I think it came together much quicker than I thought it would. I absolutely love Victorian houses in real life, so I'm not sure why I don't build more of them in The Sims. They just have so much character and charm, and you can really do a lot of different kinds of builds within a Victorian home. Like you can do a really bright and colorful build like this one, or you can do a dark and spooky Victorian house. You can also do like a Victorian house that was converted into a cafe or a library. There are so many possibilities, and I think I'm gonna start building more houses like this as opposed to my regular suburban little builds. There's nothing against suburban homes, by the way. I feel like since I grew up watching Lil Simsy build and try to build like her, that I don't really have my own specific build style. So I feel like by branching out and trying different builds, that I can kind of make my own build style that I really enjoy and that I'm good at. And so I feel like maybe Victorian homes is going to be my new build style. I don't know, we'll see. I also had to speed up this build a lot because I wanted to really take my time with it and enjoy the building process. I mean, like building in The Sims with a cup of coffee, tea, or hot chocolate and a show on in the background is so cozy, especially if it's raining outside. I think that's my favorite time to build. And it was nice to make sure that every part of the house felt complete. I feel like I often try to rush through building, especially if I'm going to be playing in that house. But it was nice to just slow down and remember that not everything has to be done immediately, and that building is still part of the game. It's not like a tutorial before the gameplay begins, which for some reason is sometimes how I feel about building or create a sim. And after finishing the exterior, I left the furnishing for another day so that I didn't fall into the same pattern of starting to get tired of building the house halfway through and giving up on the decorating. And I can definitely say that having a break in between was great. Getting a chance to step away and seeing the build with fresh eyes was very helpful and allowed me to make little tweaks to the build that I missed during the first day. And I actually felt really excited to come back and finish the build, and I was also already planning in my head what I wanted to do with the interior and changes I wanted to make to the exterior and the yard. I really wanted this house to feel a bit fancy and extravagant, so I added this fountain in the front, and I think it really brings a touch of elegance. And it's not something that I really ever do in my builds, but I think it really fits because the yard is so lush and overgrown. The fountain and walkway give a nice contrast. I also think that that pink weeping tree in the front really ties the build together. I absolutely love weeping trees, and I feel like they add so much like charm and whimsy into the build, especially Victorian old homes like this one. I also really enjoyed pulling out different plants and kind of putting them together to plan out what I wanted the garden to look like and the different plants I wanted to use, and to make sure that they actually fit well together. And I really feel like planning out the garden beds and the different plants you're having instead of just pulling random ones for each bed really helps to streamline the process of creating a garden that looks a lot more cohesive. And then something that I like to do is add like a low fence, especially to the front, to add a bit of curb appeal as like a front garden boxes or garden bed or something, just to keep it a bit more manicured at the front as opposed to just having a plain fence there. And I really loved the look of the large stepping stones up to the bench in the front yard. I never really add details like that with terrain paint, but I think it really added to the look of the yard. I went through and erased the grass in between the rocks because it looked really different from my terrain retexture. But even though it took a little bit of extra effort, I think it was really worth it. Even though I ended up having to do it a few times because the terrain paint was deleting itself, which is super annoying and frustrating. But like I said, I think it was worth it. I also added little lamps throughout the garden, which is something that I usually forget to do, but I think it just adds such a cute little touch of realism, and I think it looks really nice during the nighttime, so it's not just pitch black out there. Oh, but now that I'm thinking about it, I should have added some firefly visual effects. Those would have looked so pretty everywhere around the garden. I think next time I play, I'm going to go and put those in. So now you're watching me mess around with adding an interesting arbored garden to the side of the house. I'm not really sure how difficult it will be to see in there while playing, but it is completely functional. I play tested it before I finished the build, but I thought that would be super nice to have as a spellcaster who needs to be growing different plants for making potions, and I wanted to add a bit of interest to it because I felt like just having a fenced off garden boxes would not be very interesting. So I wanted to try something new with that item, which I always try to use that arbor, but I don't really know how to make it look good. But I think it really fit into this build here. I also really liked this pink rock kind of terrain paint from, I think it's Cottage Living. I've never really used it before, I don't think, but it is so pretty. It's like giant stepping stones with flowers in between them, and I really love it. But I find it very difficult to fit into specific builds because it is so stark and like very unique. But I think it really worked well for this. I wanted to keep the pathway going up to the house in the front very warm, so I was initially trying to use that red brick, but I felt like that was too manicured, and I really love the look and the uniqueness of this terrain paint, so I'm glad that I eventually changed it. I really love the look of the backyard, and I think it came together really nice. I finally got to use that metal arbor with the ivy. I feel like I'm always trying to use that object in my builds, but it never really fits. But it looks great in this build because I think it does have a very Victorian appearance to it. And I also love the little pebbles terrain paint I use to cover the whole backyard. Normally, I only use terrain paint to make pathways or patios, but covering the whole yard made it feel bigger and fuller and more finished. But the little pebbles with all the green grass in between still made it feel very quaint and whimsical and not too manicured. And of course, I added lots of ivy and wisteria climbing up the back of the house, which always makes any house feel more enchanting. You'll see that I added a greenhouse off the kitchen, which I thought originally I wanted to make an actual greenhouse from the inside, but I ended up turning it into a really sunny table booth in there, and I think it looks great. I used the Bistro Kit dining booth in a really deep emerald green. I never use the booth seats because the ones from Dine Out are so big and bulky and fit more of a 50s and 60s diner look, but the one from Cozy Bistro is a lot more slim and elegant looking, and I think I will definitely start using it in more of my builds. I went very out of my comfort zone for the interior of this house. I wanted it to feel very warm and moody and a bit outdated since it is a Victorian house. I used a lot of patterns on the walls and floors and a combination of deep jewel-toned reds and greens and emeralds, which I think really turned out looking very pretty. And if you're worried that red and green will look too much like Christmas, it doesn't, thankfully. But I really tried to use a bunch of items that I've never used before and mix and match different furniture pieces to give it an eclectic look of a house that has been decorated and put together over decades, or even centuries, depending on how old this spellcaster lineage is. And my usual style is very light, bright, lots of creams and whites, so I got to play around with a bunch of different items that were all new to me, which was really fun. You can see I used the Life and Death rug as well as the coffee table from, I think, the Paranormal Stuff pack that also has the roses on it, and I think those two, even though it's a bit chaotic, maybe, I think they fit really well together, especially if the theme is very like floral and rosy. I also debated using the frame TV with the rose on it as well to kind of tie in both the roses from there, but I ended up going with the cat because, you know, cats are kind of mysterious and mystical and often go very well with spellcasters as familiars. And of course, I added lots of crystal and plant decor all throughout the house. I also added the Crystal Creations table thing in the upstairs kind of office workspace because I thought that that would be really fun gameplay wise for my spellcaster to also make magical jewelry and maybe even sell it along with potions as a little home business or something. Also, I apologize while I put in the plants. I'm kind of zooming all over the house, placing plants and things all around, so it might be a little bit difficult to watch. I do really love how the kitchen turned out though. It is so warm, but that touch of green in there just adds such a beautiful kind of atmosphere and vibrancy to the build. I do change the wallpaper in the kitchen and dining room eventually, and I think it really looks a lot better when I do change it, just because the walls look a little bit plain and it kind of is a bit more bright than I would have wanted. I want it to be, like I said, very like deep and moody I also really love the look of the radiators that I put throughout the house. I think it definitely adds that kind of old-timey look, and it's just a really cute decoration in general that I really love incorporating into my builds that are supposed to be older. As I'm looking at it as well, I really do also love all the reds, which is weird because in all of my builds I usually avoid the color red because I don't know, sometimes it's like too bright, but this kind of burgundy muted kind of red is so pretty, especially in the appliances, and they just match the floor tiles really well and the curtains. I love those curtains. I think, are they from high school years? I don't know. I don't often use them, but I use them in literally every single window in this house. That red shade is so gorgeous. I also didn't want to clutter up the kitchen too much on the counter. I still wanted it to be very functional, but I added a few cute little things like the old-fashioned looking scale. I don't remember what pack that's from, but it's such a unique object that I've never really thought to use before. I also love the look of those brown cushions on the booth, as well as adding some plants around the top as if they're sitting on the backboard. I didn't spend too much time in the bathroom, but the downstairs one is the only one with a tub. I felt like as an old Victorian house that may or may not be like 150 plus years old, that having only one bathroom with a bathtub in it and it being on the downstairs bathroom made a lot of sense story-wise, but also because Victorian houses in The Sims, they often like appear really big from the outside but are actually pretty small on the inside. So the downstairs bathroom was the only bathroom big enough to fit in a bathtub or a shower. But I'm okay with that gameplay wise. I am also so in love with that vampire's toilet with the big water tank on the top. I think that is such a unique toilet. It's the only one we have like it, and it really just fits in these old kind of builds way better than the other ones. I really wish we had some more toilets in this kind of style. I also did go into debug just briefly to add some hanging plant baskets around on all of the balconies and porches. I think that is so pretty, and I really wish that we had an object like this in just the regular game as opposed to having to go into debug and scrolling all around to find it. But I think it really adds a lot to the appearance of the house, and again makes it look so much more realistic because of course these old kind of Victorian houses, you always see them with hanging flower baskets. I also added the bird houses around from the backyard stuff pack, I think, but I really love that wooden one. I use it all the time because it's so adorable. However, something new that I did was kind of clustering them together in groups of 2s and 3s and like shrinking down or sizing down a couple of them to kind of give a staggered look, and I think it looks so adorable. And I also added some wind chimes around, and I think that will be really pretty for gameplay because it does make sounds that are really nice to listen to. The hallway wasn't too special. I just added like a computer desk, of course, a bookshelf, and just some little decorations, wall decor, that kind of thing. But I also put the ladder to the attic up there, but that's not in the video because I only decided to furnish the attic when I stopped recording. I do really love how the hallway looks though up there. I think that deep blue wallpaper from the paranormal stuff pack is one of my absolute favorite wallpapers. It just looks so pretty. And with that red tone cherry kind of parquet flooring, which I normally hate red wood tones, but it just adds such a beautiful warmth to the entirety of the house. I really don't think the house would look the same without those red floors. And it's funny too because before I even thought about what I wanted the house to look like on the inside, I put down those floors because I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something different in this build. And those floors really shaped the rest of the house and how it ended up looking, and I love it so much. I also really like how the main bedroom ended up looking, or I guess it's kind of the only bedroom, but the studio workshop could be converted into a bedroom. But the main bedroom, I think it turned out really good. I used that kind of curtain bed frame wall object. I think it's from Love Struck, but it matched the Life and Death green bed so perfectly. I thought I had to use it, and it adds such a beautiful kind of whimsical, fancy, luxurious kind of look, as well as that chaise from, is it the Secret Sanctuary kit? I don't know, but all of this stuff in that beautiful tonal kind of emerald green match and looks so good together. It kind of ended up being more of a luxe appearance than I think the rest of the house, but I still think it matches quite well. But that is the finished house. I really hope you enjoyed watching and that you loved the house as much as I did. I can't believe that I talked through this entire build. I normally don't do that because I just don't have much to say about my builds, but I'm so in love with the way that this one turned out and all of the extra little details that I put into making this house unique. Let me know if you enjoyed listening to me all the way through the build, or if you would just prefer the music like I normally do. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you are new, consider subscribing so you don't miss my next video. I hope that you all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye!